The accumulation of metabolic waste within the brain is one of the major leading causes of different neurological disorders within the brain. Now, we know that brain tends to cleanse itself. It has a self-cleansing process because it does need to get rid of these metabolic wastes. However, up until now, we believe that these self-cleansing mechanism happened only at the physical level of the brain, aka the neurons or the networks of neurons. But most recently, researchers found out that brain waves may also have a very important role in this self-cleansing process of the brain. In other words, it appears that our brain waves, different frequencies within our brains, help orchestrate or synchronize and help with this self-cleansing of the brain from its metabolic wastes. One of the most scientific papers published in Nature, for example, showed that these neural networks, as well as the individual neurons, appear to synchronize together to create different rhythms of brain waves within the brain to help move these fluids within the brain along, such that it helps with moving away the metabolic waste accumulated within the brain. In other words, it appears that these neurons synchronize with each other, collaborate and work together to create these different brainwaves rhythms, which in turn move the fluid along within the different regions of the brain. We have also talked about traveling brainwaves, which means that these are the brainwaves that travel between different regions of the brain. They are no longer just local to one part of the brain where they were created by these action potential of neurons. In fact, while they are created by these action potential of neurons, for example, they tend to not stay local, but travel around different brain regions. Hence, that is also one way that these communications are happening. And in this case, the help with cleansing away the metabolic waste from different regions of them. Another study that was most recently published, interestingly, looked at whether specific frequencies that were stimulating the brain of the subjects had actually something to do with helping the brain to self-cleanse, self-regulate. While this study was done on mice, we do have enough information and findings within the body of knowledge that, for example, patients with Alzheimer's disease have these neurological disorders where the waste, a metabolic waste of the brain is not really regulated. It's not really self-cleansed. And the 40 hertz of frequencies where you add the stimulations to the brain appear to have to help. And these findings were with humans, but this particular study was done on mice because they wanted to see that can we stimulate different parts of the brain with 40 frequencies by, for example, using audio signals as well as visual signals to control the brain waves or the neural activity, stimulate the neural activity of these mice to see whether that also helps with help the brain cleanse itself. It is also worth mentioning that for this particular study, the 40 hertz gamma stimulation that they use, they tried to do it non-invasively. In other words, they did not implant sensors or electrodes within the brains of the subjects, but they use it non-invasively, so it was more at the scalp. And the beauty of this is that it goes to show that you are able to stimulate the brain even at the surface level. If you introduce different frequencies to the brain, you are able to improve or change, I should say, the neural activities of the brain. In this case, they used audio signals and visual signals at the gamma frequency rate. To be exact, it was 40 hertz of frequency at a non-invasive level, and they stimulated different parts of the brain with these different stimulations. One of the results of this study did show that, in fact, introducing these gamma frequencies at a non-invasive level to the brain appeared to, in fact, help with the clearing of these metabolic waste, especially when it had to do with the prefrontal cortex, because again, they were using these different stimuli at different regions of the brain, and prefrontal cortex was very responsive to these 40 hertz frequencies of gamma waves. Another finding of this study was that they noticed that these gamma 40 hertz frequencies also impacted the arterial pulsation within the brain, which also in turn help with getting rid of the waste product within the brain. And so that is also very interesting, because obviously they have a lot of sophisticated methodology that is out of the scope of this video that they went through, but there were these pulsation of rhythmic changes within the brain that happened. We've also talked about the pulsation rhythms within the brain and within the body in the past videos as well. Another finding of this study was that while they did not find significant difference in cell properties when they introduced the gamma frequencies, there were some changes in the RNA of these neurons that they were able to detect. And so the 40 hertz gamma frequencies, even though it's non-invasive and just at the audio and visual level, appear to have some effect on the RNA. In this case, it was specifically single nucleus RNA that they saw some changes with. They were also able to show that these gamma 40 hertz frequencies also had influence in the neuropeptides of the brain, which is a very important peptide that also has a huge role in this self-cleansing of the brain, or moving the metabolic waste out of the brain. And so the peptides were even affected by the gamma waves frequencies. To sum up, this study was able to show that the inducing of gamma frequencies, 40 hertz, does have impact, great impact on the neural activities, helping it to promote and help the brain with its self-cleansing processes and efforts, which is potentially a great findings, for example, with helping patients with Alzheimer, among other things, of course. But one also very important part here is that the prefrontal cortex was also one of the regions that was able to be affected a lot by these 40 hertz gamma frequencies, which is, as you know, a very, very important part of the human brain. The prefrontal cortex, it has a lot to do with decision making, regulations of of our behavior and cognitive processes, etc.